Here we go. Greetings all, it's Max and we're back, and I'm going to briefly cover this thing because people want to talk about, Civil War. It's a false dichotomy. People don't want to talk about, oh, it's about slavery and it's about states' rights. It's neither, all right? It's neither. And I'm just going to briefly cover it. I'm going to use a lot of plain Jane references, not any deep conspiracy research stuff, because honestly, I don't think it's worthwhile, all right? It's just the same cycle continuing over and over. The Civil War is the same thing as COVID-19. COVIDs. It's the exact same thing. Take over by foreign powers and globalists to enslave people. That's what it is. That's what it was. Okay? Nothing to do with slavery. Revisionist history. Nothing to do with states' rights. Revisionist history. All right. Let's take a look at it. Essential Civil War curriculum. Who financed the Civil War? Right? We're a bunch of mountaineer men. Okay? Where do we have our money? Our money came from exports. We didn't have income taxes. That was an Abraham Lincoln thing. Didn't have income taxes. It was tariffs for our exports. That's where we're getting our money from. Civil War, how did the North have the best, most well-advanced equipped military the planet has ever seen? How did a bunch of mountain men afford that? Why was half of the Northern Army mercenaries from other countries? They're fighting the slaves. They're freeing the slaves. They're not freeing the slaves. They were promised loot and plunder from the South. They're promised property. Whatever somebody wanted, hop on the boat. Come to America. Abraham Lincoln will set you up. That's what it was. Why? And who paid for it? The people who wanted to enslave America. Britain's a little mad. Britain's a little mad. They want their stuff back. Okay? Financing the Civil War. By the time of Abraham Lincoln's inauguration as President of the United States, USA, March 1861, 7 seceding southern states had already formed the Confederate States of America. Political leaders throughout that territory, as well as most of their counterparts, the northern border states, believed that any period of fighting to establish the legitimacy of the Confederate nation would be rather short, because it's people fighting other people. Nobody wants to fight their neighbor. Nobody wants to fight their neighbor. None of the Treasury secretaries. Oh, look, Salmon Portland Chase in the north. Haven't heard that name. Or Christopher Gustavus Memminger. Well, that's a name that goes down. No, that name disappeared. Chase is still there. Expected to have raised several $billion to prosecute a 4-year-long war. None of them expected $4 billion in a 4-year war. Billions of dollars. Where did this money come from? The United States at the time had none. War bonds. Who is buying the war bonds, people? Who is financing this stuff? A bunch of poor farmers? A bunch of people selling cotton? Prior to 1861, the USA relied on tariffs and customs duties for most of its revenue. A strong sense against accumulating debt characterized administrations from Thomas Jefferson to Franklin Pierce. Only in times of war did federal government resort to selling bonds or notes or bankers or brokers, blah, 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 blah. When James Buchanan became president in 1857, the federal debt level was a modest $28 million. The financial panic that gripped the nation later that year led to a sharp decline in revenue from tariffs and duties because they thought $28 million was bad. Okay. February of 1861, secession already in process, the prospects of a civil war growing. The Treasury cash position was at a very low level. Congress passed 2 separate bills authorizing the issuance of $35 million in government bonds. Abraham Lincoln took presidential oath in 1861. Federal debt stood at an unusually high level of $77 million. In the days of the Lincoln administration, appetite for any new debt was quite low. So your normal assortment of banker and broker subscribers purchased only 16 million. That would be your local guys. 10 and 20-year bonds. In order to secure congressional approval of the financing needed to prosecute the war, President Lincoln called that body into a special session at the time, and they went to Treasury Secretary Chase, suggested an idea. Hey, let's go for $320 million to finance the war. And then we'll do another $240 million after that. Sure, why not? Let's sell our newly founded country into slavery, debt slavery. Why not? Sounds like a great idea. Lincoln, the great guy, the guy's a commie who miraculously must have found every Israelite in the nation at the time to surround himself with. February 1862, Congress authorized the sale of another $500 million. Congress. Who is this Congress? The South has seceded. There is no more Congress. They have to start over with a new constitution. And there's Lincoln passing laws in the United States. To who? The 10 states that say they're part of the North? But the Treasury had been having trouble selling its government bonds, that $500 million. The second half of 1861. The firm J. Cook and Company had been quite helpful in distributing the Treasury obligations. It seems like J. Cook and Company must have a long-standing history of dealing in government bonds. J. Cook and Company. J. Cook and Company. Must be a long entrenched, wealthy financiers. Founded in bank in 1861. That doesn't sound shady at all. And went bankrupt in 1870 or something? That's totally not shady. And his accomplice, Fisk and Hatch, also started up 1862 and went for about the same period of time in the 1870s. That's not, they only had $1 billion of bonds that they sold for the government. You think they'd be pretty well off, but they just vanished. They just vanished. No one could find them. They went bankrupt. Nonsense. Nonsense. It's all a global system, guys. Get out of this dichotomy thing like it's some moral fight against slavery. You realize in America, we kill millions of innocent children every year. Legally. And you think the people in the 1870s cared what some guy did 1,000 miles away with a black person and a slave? They would say that that's their problem to work out. Some great moral thing. We're all going to gather up arms. Do you believe that? It's a moral. How could people enslave people? It's terrible. You know, in the state of the country at the time, indentured servitude's a thing. How do you think the North got all of their people to fight? Come over, fight in our military, and we'll give you land. We'll let you rape and pillage the South. We will do whatever you want. Get on the boat. Here's a rifle. You have to serve until the war is done. How do you think they got people? By having slaves. And guess what, guys? Slaves in the South were not allowed to participate in the military. Not until the very last month of the war. So why was there more black soldiers in the South in the military than in the North if slaves couldn't be in the military in the Confederacy? Because they were free, protecting their land from foreign invaders. Talking about Cook again. His spectacular success in selling these obligations prompted Congress to authorize another $830 million. Money out of thin air. Who is the slave? The person issuing the funds or the guy who's got all the debt? The guy who's got all the debt. So what happens? What happens now when the North wins and it's time to collect on that debt? What happens there? I think I just closed it. Oh no. Oh no. Well, the Act of 1871, where we have to create a new government. A new government. And I do have the Act of 1871 that I maybe go over in a future video. But essentially, it looks very innocuous as just declaring Washington, D.C. a state and the borders and setting up the legislature. There's only one problem with that, guys. Washington, D.C. was already started up in 1790. It's already set up in 1790. So what is this new thing in 1871? Well, let's take a look. This is just a brief synopsis by a legal professional to talk about it. With all the hubbub about the Act of 1871 circulating in the patriot community, I felt it was time to republish for about the 10th time the actual breakdown of what happened in the Act of 1871. After its initial repeal in 1874, people are trying to get rid of it because they know what it is. People weren't stupid like today. And to publish again, correct analysis, all the team law, blah, blah, blah. 1871, the Act of 1871, an act to provide a government for the District of Columbia. We already have a government. This is the creation of a new government. Statute 419, February 21st, 1871, which was repealed in 1874 and then passed piecemeal via these actions. An act providing permanent form of government for District Columbia. Several other statutes here to remain a municipal corporation brought forward from the Act of 1871 as provided in the Act March 2nd, 1877, amended and approved March 1878, revised statutes of the United States relating to the District of Columbia, 1873 and 4, and all of these other acts. The people saw that and then they said no, and then they just kept squirreling them in there. I'm going to talk a little bit about, the amendments. Why did the amendments get so goofy after the Declaration of Independence, particularly 13th and 14th Amendments? The 13th one abolishing slavery. Well, it already was abolished. Because if you're considered a people of the people, if you are considered a people, it's already, there is no such thing as slavery. The issue was with the blacks is that they didn't consider them people. Oh, how could they be so racist? Yes, I know. But that's what the issue was. That's why they didn't have rights. So what's the significance of the 13th Amendment? Well, there was another 13th Amendment that says if you pledge allegiance to the crown over there, you can't run for office. That means no lawyers. The Bar Association, the people who are your lawyers thinking that you're going to protect you, they swore an oath to the Queen. Okay? If you have an oath to the Queen, you can't have an allegiance to the United States. So the amendment was out there to prevent people with oaths of allegiance to other political parties rather than the United States. And that disappeared, and now it's all about slavery. Okay? None of this matters nowadays, by the way. It's just a cycle of repeating. You put forward an idea like COVIDs. That doesn't exist. The people all know it doesn't exist. And in the future, in the revisionist history books, it's going to be all of the businesses collapsed under COVIDs. No, it isn't. The businesses all collapsed because of foreign takeover, the New World Order of the government. That's why the businesses collapsed, not because of COVIDs. It's because of the government. Our country was divided and we lost all our sovereignty because of the government. Foreign invaders, Abraham Lincoln. Dare I say, the Jews, or a certain sect of that particular ilk who likes controlling all the money. Okay, So, when looking at the intent of all this, given that the actual District of Columbia was set up in 1790, okay, the actual District of Columbia, and fully chartered by 1801, the aim of the Act of 1871 is, as appears, merely to set up the U.S. corporation. That all that made part of the territory of the United States included within the limits of the District of Columbia be, and the same is hereby created into a government by the name of the District of Columbia, by which name it is hereby constituted a body corporate for municipal purposes and exercise all other powers of a municipal corporation. Okay? And this is upsetting because I cannot make this smaller to actually do something like that. He's going to let me? Here it goes. Okay. So the Act of 1871 was to create a private corporation owned by the actual government of District of Columbia. Okay? You've got all these states, and now they have the government, federal government, the real government, where the post office comes from. The real government is the post office, okay? Or at least a part of the real government. And they set up a second District of Columbia Corporation. And the invention of the zip code and citizenship. Oh, we get to be citizens now. See, before I was a flesh and blood man with rights. Now I get to be a citizen. I get to be an employee of the District of Columbia Corporation. It sounds great. Further, the only government created in the Act was the same form of private government any private corporation has within the operation of its own corporate construct. We all work for Walmart. The District of Columbia, guys. That's why no one cares about rights, civil liberties, or any of that. Corporations don't have that. U.S. Corp is not merely an incorporated municipality. Rather, it is a private corporation, District of Columbia Municipal Corporation, that was lawfully created by our original jurisdictional government. Okay? This is what the Civil War was about. Enslaving you. Under the British Admiralty law system, and the people that loaned you all the money. Because how are they going to get money out of a people? They have to get the money out of the corporations. That's the way their system works. You actually can't engage in commerce unless you do it through a corporation in the New World Order system. Now I have to reposition everything and lose my train of thought. Reposition. 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 Okay, so we're done with that one. Northern military advantages in the Civil War. Greatest military at the time. How? How was that? Union was unprepared, they say. They had the best cannons, the best technologies, the monitor ships sailing up and down the rivers. The role of manpower in the Civil War. The Northern Army had like a 2-to-1 advantage over the Confederates. The North was able to muster 2,000 regiments. 1696 were infantry. The South only raised 1,000 regiments, although they had many more armies. The North, unlike the North, there was no ongoing immigration in the South. They didn't have foreign invaders as part of their military in the South. They got the slaves, right? Because they're up there with their muskets. They got their ball and chains on with muskets in the South. Northern immigration patterns allowed the Northeast to replace workers later drafted in the Army, and in some cases, new immigrants went right from their ships to the Civil War front lines. Let me tell you, if there's a Civil War right now, and whoever side you're on, one side, their army is comprised of completely foreign nationals, UN troops, Frenchies, everybody else, and then the rest are people who are actually born and raised in the country. What side do you think is right? Without knowing anything about the issue. Union victory in the Civil War depended on greater troop strength. As battlefields became conflicts of attrition, the North was able to replenish troops with greater ease than the South. How? They making more babies in that 4 years? Even at the start of the war, white Southern population was dwarfed by teeming millions in the North. Inability to supply troops, a key factor in Lee's surrender, helped end the war in 1865. The Union's utter destruction of the agricultural base, such as Sheridan's Foray and blah, 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 blah. You had UN troops, man. UN troops fighting the North. Why? Because they want to protect their investments, don't they? Huh? The Rothschilds, they want to protect your investments. You just spent $1 billion to make sure that your stuff is instituted and you get your country back under the New World Order umbrella. You just spent $1 billion. You want to make sure you get that money back. Oh, Lincoln, well, let's do an income tax. That sounds good. Income tax. We're going up here on the amendments, okay? Because I want you to take a look. 10th Amendment's the last real amendment that was really ever made. The 12th Amendment, 1803, sure. Okay, we'll go to the 12th Amendment. I don't think this one talks about people, though. We'll see. 12th Amendment. Text. Electors. Same state as themselves. Presidents certify, sealed, United States, blah, blah, blah. Here it's talking about persons, so I have to wonder about this one. I think that one was amended. I'm not sure on the 12th Amendment. Here it says it was 1804 ratified, but what you'll notice here, we'll go up to the First Amendment. In the text, Congress shall make no law establishment of religion, prohibiting the free exercise thereof, abridging the speech, freedom of press, right of the people to peaceably assemble, or petition the government for redress of grievances. The people, we the people. All of this sort of language by non-lawyers, remember, they want to make it so that lawyers can't be a part of government. Second Amendment in the text. There are several versions of the text, right? Okay, a well-regulated militia, free state, the right of the people, okay, to bear arms shall not be infringed. The people. Synonymous with individual almost in legal terms, right? And then we have the abolishes slavery one, the 13th Amendment that popped in out of nowhere. Text, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Congress shall have power over the legislation. So what is the purpose of this if we already have the rights that came before it? Okay, slavery or involuntary servitude? Well, the people that were your mercenaries were voluntary slaves. That's fine. It's okay to have voluntary servitude, indentured servitude. So who are they talking about? Revisionist a little bit? You can say, oh, it's the black slaves. Well, they already won. They could just outlaw it. Is this to protect against a resurgence of slavery? 14th Amendment, the amendment that takes everybody's rights away. Okay? Look at this language here. It's not people. It's not all people born or naturalized in the United States. Persons. When was this done in the 14th Amendment here? When did they decide this? Yeah, 1868. When did that guy who sold all the bonds, that Hook guy, when did he go under? 1868. Oof, vanished. We got our District of Columbia Corporation set up to handle all of these things. We no longer need the front man selling the bonds. Everyone that we can point to, someone can point back to it. 1868. It says here in the Wikipedia, defines citizenship. Really? There's no such thing as a citizen before this. Contains privileges or immunities clause, due process, equal protection clause, and deals with post-Civil War issues. Okay, well, this should be good. So we're going to look at the text. All persons, okay, born, naturalized United States, are subject to the jurisdiction thereof. All citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside, you're residing. State shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. This is where 14th Amendment is where you replace your constitutional God-given rights as a human being, as a man or woman on the land, and we replace them with those who want to be citizens as part of the Washington, D.C. Corporation of the United States of America, are given these rights instead. Instead of your actual God-given rights, you get these ones. Okay? State shall make and enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges. You're already a slave in the 14th Amendment now. The privileges of a citizen or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person with its jurisdiction equal protection of the laws. See, it almost sounds like they're talking about people, but you can certainly deny a corporation life. You certainly can make their corporation go defunct. Liberty, due process, okay, or property. Corporations can have their property without due process of law. Representative shall be among the several states, respective numbers counting the whole persons in each state, excluding Indians. Indians apparently, according to the amendment, cannot be citizens of the United States, which is a good thing. Okay? But when the right to vote in any election, blah, 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 no person shall be a senator or representative of Congress unless they're a person, blah, blah, blah. Validity, here we go, Section 4, the validity of the public debt of the United States. Now, they just fought a war, and Lincoln just said, because he's dictator, there is no real Congress. Those people didn't get to vote. The South didn't get to vote. So dictator Lincoln put in the taxes and racked up $1 billion of debt for our newly free country. We freed the slaves, right? The validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions, bounties, and services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned. No one's going to say, how much did you pay for that? Do we really owe you that much money, Mr. Grabler banker? Do we really actually owe you that much money? Can you prove that we own that money? Shall not be questioned. But neither the United States Corporation now, we've incorporated, nor any state shall assume or pay any debt obligation incurred in late of an insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or claim it for the loss of emancipation of any slave, such as all debts. This means that if you live in the South, tough luck. If we hired a bunch of UN troops to come in and burn down all your houses, kill all of your children, take away all your slaves, and all this stuff, that's tough luck. It's tough luck. You can't sue us for anything. You can't sue us for war crimes. We're making a constitutional amendment that you have no rights. You're not a citizen. This is Walmart taking over. Walmart taking over America. Now, granted, they have to give lip service to people's actual rights. Otherwise, they'd wake up and go, how are you able to do this? Okay? Which is why you hear about the Second Amendment, right to bear arms, and the First Amendment, freedom of speech. But none of that stuff really exists in the way that people associate themselves as their corporate ID. Their certificate of birth, B-E-R-T-H, as in being birthing a vessel, to go out on the waters, and the government's a bunch of pirates. That's how it is, guys. Now, like, again, It's not worth wasting time over except to see that nothing is ever a bipartisan, or it's never a two-part thing. Is it a Republican or a Democrat? Is it the red pill or the blue pill? Neither. False dichotomies. Okay. So, yeah, they redo their debt and say, yeah, okay, Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislations, blah, blah, blah. So there you have that. What else do I have up here? We're going to go through definitions of citizen and person quick, and then we're going to be done. And we're going to talk about solutions to the upcoming collapse tonight, hopefully with Frank from King's Table. So, a citizen, person, okay, who by place of birth, I should look this one up too. I don't have enough tabs. Nationality of one or both parents by going through, I mean, all of this, you ever heard of a parent company? Okay, all of this terminology being used in here is legalese. All right? It's all legalese. The only confusing one is person, because they actually redefined that one once upon a time to be a corporation. But corporations can have parent companies, okay? So, corporation who by place of birth, where you were created, nationality, wherever you associate with, or one or both parents, parent companies, or by going through naturalization processes, sworn loyalty to a nation. The United States traditionally has taken position. American citizen is subject to losing his or her citizenship if he or she commits acts, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's the general deal of it. Citizen. This is supposedly the legal definition. I didn't get the Black's Law one. The link didn't come up. Persons, one who under the Constitution and the laws of the United States has the right to vote for representatives, Congress, blah, public officers. Again, nothing delineating that it's an actual human being. Citizens are either a native born or naturalized. Again, what is a citizen? They're a person. We'll look up person next. All natives are not citizens of the United States. This is an if then but by. Okay, all natives are not citizens of the United States. What does it mean by natives? Real people? I actually want to look at that. And this is actually going on into what some other countries are talking about. But essentially, just because you live in America or you were born in America does not make you automatically a citizen of the United States. You need to have a birth certificate to be a citizen of the United States. But that's not what the Constitution says. Right, that's not what the Constitution says. But that's what the United States Corporation says. Okay, definition of person. Okay, person. This word is applied to men, women, and children who are called natural persons. You have to be called natural persons in legal in order to be considered a man, woman, or child. In law, man and person are not exactly synonymous terms. No, they're never synonymous. Never. Any human being is a man, whether he be a member of society or not, whatever the rank he holds, whatever be his age, sex, blah, 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 blah. 3. But when the word persons is spoken in legislative acts, natural persons will be intended unless something appears next to the context that applies to artificial persons. Not true. Natural persons will always be spelled out. Which is, you have statutes, very rarely do they refer to natural persons, they refer to regular persons. That's why I wish I would have found Black's Law, because that is incorrect. Persons, unless specifically delineated, means corporations. I do want to see what it says what natives are. Born in the jurisdiction of the United States. A lot of this stuff has to come down to natives who are citizens are children of citizens and aliens at the time, blah, blah, blah. This is all legalese. Legalese. If all this stuff works, So we created a corporation known as the District of Columbia, where the United States, in all capital letters, corporations all have to be capitalized, was set up. And they have their income tax, and as part of the income tax, people need to have a certificate of birth so that all of the wealth that they make throughout their entire acts in commerce, effectively, through your birth certificate, can be bought, traded, sold on the stock exchange. And that's where you borrow money from. We need $2 trillion more, Mr. Federal Reserve Grabler banker guy. No problem. How many immigrants did you bring into the country and give birth certificates to? Oh, 2 million. Oh, well, that will easily qualify you for another $2 trillion of debt management on those newly created citizens. It's all about money, people. It's all about money and slavery. I mean, talk about abolishing slavery. People associate themselves with their corporate ID so much they're debt slaves. What do you call it? Where you're bought and sold on the stock market? Look at your birth certificate. It is written on bond paper. It has a bond number on it, a bond ID on it. What do you think it's for? Go to the DMV and say that's not my name. My name is capital M A X, capital B A U E R, right? They can't do it. It has to be in capital letters. Any thing that you get from a corporation that has the little printed out tag with your name and address and all, it has to be corporate numbers. It has to be in all caps. There's a reason for that. What associates a person who is a living human being on the land to somebody who is under the jurisdiction of Washington, D.C., District of Columbia? That would be your zip code. So it doesn't matter where you live. If you say you reside at such and such zip code 55038 or whatever, you're saying, "Oh, I work for Walmart. I work for the District of Columbia. I'm an employee, and all of the little nonsense rules apply to me because I am part of the corporation. I'm a member. I'm a member of the corporation." The missing 13th Amendment. So if you want some homework, and go look at the 13th Amendment that says you can't have allegiance to another government or another entity and have allegiance to the United States at the same time. Abraham Lincoln, surrounding himself with nothing but Jews, Jewish photographer, banker advice, best friend, everything. And it's like, you can look at those people, take very good account of how many of them there are, right? And at the time, there was only a couple thousand in America, miraculously all surrounding Abraham Lincoln. Very, very interesting stuff. Immigrants in the Civil War. Yes, look up immigration, Civil War. And it looks like the rest of the things in the tabs that I have are all related to the live stream that is going to be happening tonight, probably 7 or 8 o'clock, and where we're going to talk about actually solutions to what's going on with the global kind of sort of takeover and how to be well prepared for it and things. So in closing, don't fall for false dichotomies ever, okay? You're not a lefty or a righty. I mean, obviously, we loosely describe those people as blatant communists and psychopaths the farther left you go. But don't identify yourself as either a Republican or a Democrat. We need a two-party, blah, 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 blah. If you want a real dichotomy, you go with good and evil. Okay? Good and evil. Truth and falsehood. There's a good dichotomy for you. Truth, is it true or is it false? I believe in truth. Okay? So that's your real only dichotomies. Everything else is typically set up to be a false narrative because that is part of the spell. You have to have option A and option B, and everyone can fight it all out. But at the end of the day, it all comes over morality. You want to go back and you want to say that the Civil War was an exercise of morality. It was not. It was not. Regardless if slavery was wrong, black slavery, they had effectively outlawed it for the most part, as in bringing in new slaves and all that stuff long before. It was more or less a matter of what they're doing with the current slaves that were there. It was on its way out. People want to believe that, fine. It doesn't matter. I didn't grow up then at that time. But I can look and see what the Constitution says, what the laws say, and who was involved, and it's always follow the money, guys. It's always follow the money. Who owns the money? They might be over there in Israel. Maybe. And we'll get into that, and I'll for certain be thrown off of YouTube if I go into that topic. Okay? But there is a reason they're God's chosen people. Doesn't mean they're going to be a good example. Could mean that they're going to be a bad example. And given that we have 7 years of tribulation focused on them specifically, which one do you think it is? You think they're a good example or a bad example? Who runs all of Hollywood? Who runs all the porn? Who runs all of the banks? All of the banks for the governments, I should say. Well, who financed the Civil War? Who was in charge of that whole thing? So now you know what it was all about. It was the Civil War. What it effectively did was not free slaves. It created slaves out of everybody through color of law. Color of law. And the way that they passed statute, not an actual law. A statute is a corporate policy. Right? Like you work at Walmart, you got to tuck your shirt in. That's a statute. If you don't work at Walmart, you don't have to tuck your shirt in. Okay? Sets up the system of statutes with people thinking that these apply to them. Well, they apply to your corporate ID. And if you identify as yourself as a citizen, okay, then those rules apply to you. If you identify as a man or woman on the land, those rules can't apply to you because they're not rules. They're rules that govern corporations. There are some out there, there are some laws that say specifically natural persons. But if that terminology is not used, then they're talking about corporations. Or if they say includes in the legal terminology. So you could have blah, 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 law applies to blah, 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 all these people and all these people and all these, blah, 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 law applies to everybody in the planet, blah, 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 includes corporation at the end. That means that all that blah, 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 blah that it says the law applies to doesn't apply to them. It only applies to the corporation because of the term includes. So everything they just said, you look at includes corporation. Okay? It's all legalese, admiralty law, color of law nonsense that people have been operating on and it's a satanic system, guys. Don't get all tied up in figuring out admiralty law and go be a sovereign citizen. And these people out there that do this stuff, it works to some extent, okay? But don't go out there. Everybody goes out with these ideas. So I'm going to go stop paying taxes because I'm a man on the land and I don't have to pay. Well, true, but good luck. Because the IRS and those guys are criminal mafia. And they don't need to follow any of the rules. They don't need to follow the Constitution. They don't need to follow any laws. They don't need to follow any of that. Why not? Because those guys, the people who you think are going to protect you, the government going to protect you, the government needs protection from the IRS, guys. The government needs protection from the banksters. You think the government is going to protect you from IRS and all this stuff and the International Monetary Fund and all these? No. They don't. The laws do not apply to them because everybody is in debt up to their eyeballs. So understand that it exists. And in certain cases, you can use this stuff primarily for contracting and engaging in commerce. But don't try and get out of paying your bills. Don't try and cheat the tax man. Just pay your taxes. It's not worth the headache to get involved in any of this stuff. It really isn't. And, you know, the deeper you go back through history, the more you find out that everything you were ever taught was a lie. Okay? So just go in with the assumption from this day forward that everything you were taught in school was a lie. And you're not going to be far off. Oh, yeah, we went to the moon. We went to the moon back in 1968. Went to the moon. We can't go there today. We lost the technology. Civil War is about slaves. No, it's about states' rights. No, it's about slaves. No, it's about states' rights. Neither. It's about controlling the world. All that space nonsense is about controlling your mind. Okay? That's what it is. Be free. Be free. Don't listen to this nonsense. And don't listen to people that want to, like, perpetually get involved in arguments. It's a waste of time at this point, you know? We've got right now a real problem with global government takeover. We have a real problem right now that we need to come up with solutions to make things a little bit easier for people and how to navigate the treacherous waters we're going into, because they're pushing real hard. And, you know, people are waking up a bit. People are starting to wake up. So we got to have ideas and plans and things put in place to, you know, ensure our future a bit and try to preserve as much freedom as we can as we go through this time before we're all taken up out of here. All right? So that's what we have with the Civil War. I don't really ever want to talk about it again because that's not that important to me. Okay? It's history, which is all just who knows what was going on. All you can do is follow the money and see what like is going on in the laws, because there's always has to be documentation of what gets changed. Okay? The he said, she said stuff, who cares? You can't prove any of that. But numbers and censuses and facts from everywhere that talk about how much money the Northern Army collected and how many of those people were immigrants and indentured servants. Okay? That's all on record, multiple places. And that's what you got to pay attention to in some of these things. I mean, it's a rabbit hole, guys. It's a rabbit hole. And yeah, that's about what I have to say on that. And I'm going to be out of here.